All right. What up, Nick?
It's been a minute, Hassan. How are you?
I'm doing fantabulous. It's good to see you, man.
Thank you. Same here.
Long time no see. I was
I'm off this week, so I have time.
You're what? You're working today?
No,
You're
I'm
what?
off this week.
Oh, you're off this week, so you can join us. Oh
Yeah.
my
Although
God.
I got two calls from my job already today, so
Yikes.
am I really off? I don't know.
You should, you know what I do? Let me tell you something. As soon as it hits 4 p.m. here in the Pacific Northwest, I shut down all my work stuff. I
Yeah.
don't care if the world's on fire. There's something that we have inside Microsoft that we call DRI,
Hmm.
dedicated, responsible, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, unless I'm on call,
Hmm.
I have absolutely no business with work. Like how my schedule works is that between 4 and 9 p.m., I'm just hanging out with my kids.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know anybody. I don't even
Hmm.
know anything about technology. Very
Hmm.
likely holding up stuffed animals with my son and running around each other in the house. That's
Yeah.
it stops there. But once it's 9 p.m. until
Hmm.
like 2 in the morning, this is where I put on my beast mode
Hmm.
again and just go and see what's out there. Um, with the pandemic, a lot of people have lost that kind of boundary and isolation. Like people used to say, as soon as I step out of work, that's my hard stop, right?
Yeah.
They might get pulled into work and stay there until 5, 6 o'clock, but once they leave, they left, they're out,
Right.
right? With the pandemic, now this boundary is not there anymore. Like this boundary is gone.
Agreed.
You go and try to like you don't have the option. You're working remotely. That
Hmm.
means you are accessible,
Yeah.
right? It's a I'll try to go to work on Monday and
Hmm.
see what the deal is, you
I
know.
am like, so I'm, it's no secret that I'm raging anti-work, right? Like, part of that movement. And, I agree. Like COVID has like eroded it's eroded these boundaries, right?
Yep,
And I fully support like, your approach. Like, hey, at this time, like this relationship between myself and my employer is terminated, right? Like
yep,
that's they don't own you, right?
yep,
That said, I am the living, breathing example of do what I say, not what I do. I
yep.
am absolutely horrible. And it's funny as we talk about return to office and things like that. I'm like, I am willing to give you that
Mm-hmm.
extra time, that eroded boundary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll start at 8,
Mm-hmm.
8:30, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
go to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And normally if I'm in the office, I get there at 8 and I leave it like 4:45. I am out the door. Now
Yep,
I may log in if something's going on, but I'll
yep,
check email like twice and like what.
yep,
But I'm done. I'm
yep,
done. That's it. I'm like, I will give you this every day. Like I don't care. Like,
yep,
and they're like, no, like I don't get it. So it's mainly extroverts driving. It's
yep.
like,
A lot of people also, I heard this from a lot of people. A lot of people will say, well, I'm afraid. Like there's this person that I'm mentoring, and their biggest anxiety, right, is that if they don't answer, they're gonna get fired.
yeah,
And I said to them,
yeah,
okay, so what? You're in the tech industry, there's 4.5 million open positions just in the United States.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, like literally, this is the gravy train time. This is the time where you
Yeah.
get to be like, oh yeah, have I told you guys about the guy that had 10 jobs at the same time? Let me tell
Is
you.
this the one who like kind of outsourced like some of his stuff and he was taking like the haircut off the top?
No, 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 no. He didn't outsource anything, right? This
Mhm.
guy basically went and applied for 10 different open positions,
Mhm.
right? And he said here in the US, you can coast for at least a couple of months before people realize you're not really doing any work and they fire you. So what this guy used to be doing, he's switching like every couple of weeks, he switched to the next job and he does a little bit of work here. And then 2 weeks,
Yeah.
he does a little bit of work here. He made
Wow.
$1.5 million
That's
in 1 year as an entry-level engineer.
uh I feel like I'm doing it all wrong, you know, like weird stuff like that. So
I, I, do you know when I realized I'm doing it all wrong? When Floyd, you know Floyd Money Mayweather, right?
yeah,
When he created that match between him and Conor McGregor,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
That Irish arrogant
Hmm.
prick,
Yeah.
and basically, you know, he created the match. It's not like a part of a tournament or
Hmm.
anything.
Right.
He actually created that event and he made $50 million
Oh yeah. Yeah.
in 30 minutes.
Hmm. It's like, the payoffs are huge, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
you
the views, entertainment,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's fun. You mentioned the 10 jobs guy, right? And it's
Uh-huh.
like, there are legitimately some people who are like, like they will get two jobs because they're working
Yeah,
remotely, right?
yeah,
And then the companies are like, no, but here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to
yeah,
like opine about the system at large.
yep,
We have a problem with that, but we don't have a problem saying, hey, in order to have a living wage, you have to work two back-to-back jobs, right? Like a waitress and like a bartender, or like what I'm saying, like you have like you're an actor and or like
yep,
that doesn't make sense to me, right?
yep.
Like like listen, if they are doing like I said, I don't know. It seems, and this is why I think as workers, we're just prostitutes. We're all prostituting ourselves. You know, it's all and it's like, and people don't like it when you don't give them attention,
Mm-hmm.
right? And organizations don't like it. They think that, and it's like this sense of ownership, and that's one of the fucked up things about our
Mm-hmm.
current system that I hate. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if you're going to value me for my output, value me for my output, and pay me for that output. Beyond that, fuck off, right? Like my time, my like whatever, fuck off.
This
Like
is
just
this is my dream, Casper. I this is why I built GetFile. GetFile is about you pick up the task, create a pull request, merge it, get paid. I don't
mhm.
have to know you, you don't have to know me. You
I'm
know,
cool with that.
yep.
Although I've come to appreciate getting to know you and everyone else here.
See,
And you
someone just
certainly aren't paying me for any pull requests I'm doing for this.
that's the thing. Someone just suggested this to me. He said add and get file the ability for people to meet and pair. So we need to add a calendar feature in
Mm.
get file where people could actually pair program, you know, to
Calendars are
increase.
tough.
Yeah,
You
that
don't want that headache.
I'm
mm,
curious, Hassan, could
mm.
you put a monetary value on every line of code that you analyze through GitFile?
Not the line of code, but the broker. Like if I ask you to build a broker for a storage integration, I'll give you $5. If I ask you to build an orchestration service, I'll give you $30. So every
Sure.
point is $1.
No, I was more thinking like, so if you've got a class
Mhm,
that is part of some common repository that lots of people use,
mhm,
then like across all of the repositories that are
mhm.
in Git or across like
Oh,
Azure.
oh, they have to be standard compliant. Gatefile doesn't monitor non-standard compliant repositories.
No, it's simpler than that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Because you've got geez, I've got a drama going on behind me.
Okay.
You've got so you've got a commit, right? And it
Uh-huh.
has a line of code that's attributed to your contribution into that repository. You
Yep.
can then track where that line of code goes based on effectively the number of people that are using those dependencies. And if you analyze the code that is consuming that dependency, you can track it back through that line of code. So then you can say, okay, what are those companies worth and what are those products worth in the market? And you can analyze all of that and you can cross-reference it back to that one line of code.
I got an idea on top of that.
Go ahead, Nick.
So
Go ahead.
you calculate that worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not a single, it's not as value as single point in time. That worth is continuously being delivered. The
Yep.
longer that line of code goes unaltered, the more you get in, like, subscription or remuneration or whatever. Like it's like what is it?
Yes.
When actors get checks from stuff that gets sold, and like, those, I can't remember what those things are, but you're like, that's what you get, right? And until Git
Oh,
Blame
you
says that
mean,
it goes to someone else,
you mean
you keep getting
royalty?
that. Yeah,
Ro
royalties. That's right.
royalties.
Royalty
Yep.
checks.
Yep. So let me tell you this. So there are two models here that I could come up with, right? There is do it now, get paid for it, no harm, no foul, goodbye.
Hmm.
Or you do the line of code as a partner. So
Hmm.
you're doing it as a contractor. I am asking you to build me a foundation service. You built the foundation service, you get your $15, goodbye, right?
Hmm.
I'm thinking of doing it crypto, but a lot of people told me don't do it crypto because you're introducing novelty over novelty. Like GetFile itself is a novel idea. Now you're introducing crypto on top of it, and not everybody's actually on board,
If
right?
you were to introduce crypto, I mean, boil it down to its essential. What is the benefit that you get by introducing crypto?
Crypto is that means that anybody in the world can be a part of this system without me having to worry about, oh, whether PayPal is allowed to be used in Uzbekistan or not.
That's true. At the same time, there's risk, right? The risk there being that the variability of any cryptocurrency right now is massive compared to traditional currency, right?
No, I understand. Like if you go and say this project is gonna cost you zero point 0.5 Ethereum,
Yeah.
it's give or take around $20, right?
Hmm.
That's what the project value is. That's what the engineers are going to take. Actually, you guys are the best people to talk to about this because you do this nonsense fintech stuff. So, so, so let me just tell you this. If you contribute as a partner, that means you don't get paid up front, but
Hmm.
when the project starts getting used, you
Hmm.
evaluate every cent that the project generates and you get your fair share. Like let's say Sam and Paul and Hassan and Nick have already contributed to this project. You get paid based on the percentage. Okay. So like this guy that did Blazerize, right? He's selling it
Hmm.
for a professional license for some, $500, right?
Right.
If we get $500 every year, then each and every one of us gets 125,
Hmm. Yeah.
assuming that our contributions are set. But let's say Sam did 50%, right? This way we're treating people fairly, but at the same time, Nick, I built Git files so people can have their contributions visualized and nobody could lie about their experience anymore. What you actually put in is what actually gets displayed in there.
I don't know why this came to my mind, but like, all right, so like basically what you're talking about is an equity model, like profit sharing under equity model, where the equity model is constantly evolving. The
Hmm.
equity distribution is constantly evolving depending on, total code base and,
Hmm.
lines, right? For some reason, do you know the story about Bugsy Siegel and the history of Las Vegas? So
What's
Bugsy
that?
Siegel Las Vegas was a patch of desert, and Bugsy Siegel established the first hotel out there. He was a mobster,
Mm,
right? And the
mm,
thing is, though, but the thing is, like, he would sell. He'd be like, "Oh, you have 10% ownership, or like X number of shares, right?"
mm,
But he kept diluting the pool, right? He
mm,
massively diluted the ownership shares, like as he started getting people to come on board to kind of finance this. But wait, there was a movie like 2 decades, 3 decades ago with Warren Beatty called Bugsy, like, which talks
mm.
about it. I mean, it's a fictitious, account, but it was based on, like, how he did it.
Yep,
Of course, we know what Las Vegas is today, right? I mean,
yep.
but I think it was the Flamenco. I think I'm not 100% sure about.
Hmm.
Sam's just like, God damn, this like Nick's here. We're not coding. Like, what the fuck?
No, no, he just woke up. He doesn't like it because it's too early for him. I'll try to move our sessions. I keep saying I'm gonna try to move our sessions. See the problem now is that I want to move it later, but this guy gets really busy. Like if you look at his calendar, I can see, he gets really, really busy in at noon and stuff like that. It would be perfect for Paul. I don't know about you, Nick. Like if we do it at 10, for
I'm good with that.
instance.
If anything, like, that gives me a little more time in the morning. I can go to gym earlier in the morning, and then I can make it. But you do it on days I'm not in the gym, so I don't care. That's fine with me.
Do you want to do it at 10 a.m., Sam? 10 a.m.?
9, 10, 11. works
Well,
for me.
will you wake up, you at 9, you show up on a live stream and you're like, "Oh, I just woke up." I just want you to be happy. I want you to know that, you
I'm
know?
very happy. 9.
Okay. Okay. Do you know what's making me happy out of all of this is that Sam normally just kind of like does all that OData stuff on his own, right? Now he has a team. This is
No,
different.
we are a team,
Yes. We're
not
doing it
only
together,
one
right?
person.
You don't have to. They had to ship Sam to Kenya to see the OData team in Kenya, and he's like, "What did you do in Kenya, Sam? When you went over there? What did you do?"
When I visit Kenya, it was 2019.
Yeah. And what did you do?
And at the time, we tried to help new team member to ramp up.
You're just trying to get them up to speed, and you went to Kenya, my friend. Did you go by yourself, or did you take your family with you?
Only me. But I visited Kenya with Mike
Yeah,
and Lohan, my
yeah.
previous manager.
Lohan? Lindsay's father?
Mm,
Okay. Nobody got that one.
mm.
All right. All right. Let's take a look at what we have today. So here's the question that I want you guys to kind of think about. I'm gonna need to. Is everybody here okay if I went and said, if I went and said I want if this guy comes in as null, we should freak out and we should throw an exception. Is that okay with everybody?
I would expect you would, because why wouldn't you have nullable reference type annotations?
Just answer the question, man.
Yes, yes. Why wouldn't you? Yes. I mean, it's
Okay.
not a valid state. You establish expectations up front, and then you move on.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna write a test that says if this thing that's coming in is null, then freak out, right?
Okay.
And Sam, you're gonna have to make it pass today
Oh, shit.
because
I can see
Paul,
we've
because
regressed in
because
the.
because Paul is busy writing generic classes, single points of failures. So I'm gonna let him do that. So here's what I'm gonna do. So you see under models, under these O tokens, I'm gonna create a new folder and I'm gonna call it exceptions. Let me increase the visibility on the screen in here. Once we handle the exceptions, we're done with this service. We're ready to move to the O node service, and we need to find a good name for it. What do we call it? O nodization? I don't know. We need to find a good name for it. But anyway, we're close. Some 53 sessions later, we are close. Sam's biggest problem with everything is that I'm a little too taking my sweet time with anyway, null O token exception. Okay. And what this guy is gonna say, it's just a specific, it's what I call localized exception. And what this localized exception is gonna go and say, oh, we don't have that in here. I'll explain what exception is in a second with the X. But the localized exception talks about the specific issue, and then there's categorized exception that goes and says, oh, a validation issue has happened, and we need to talk about that in a second. But we'll come back to that. Here's this guy, CTOR, and then um, uh, let's say not null O token, null query exception. Null O token query exception. Come on. Okay, here we go. And then we're gonna go here and say message, base, message, O token query is null. I love how it's trying to think for me. It's beautiful. Okay, so far so good. Yes. Okay, so that's
I
this
got a
guy.
bunch of questions, but I can wait.
I would be surprised if you didn't. But okay, here's another one in here. Let me add to your confusion and to your questions for a second there. Um, I also want to have O token validation exception. And that's the generic categorical type that basically handles, categorizes all these local issues. So this guy also takes an exception. It will inherit from an inner exception that is of type exception, inner exception like this. I hope you guys are keeping up. I feel like I lost my audience there. And then let's see, message, O token, validation, error occurred. Please fix the errors and try again. Okay, we are at 133. Let's O token validation error occurred, fix the errors and try again here.
Try again.
Yeah, try again. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Sam. Okay. Under that, I want to pass in the inner exception, which is the actual issue that happened. There's a little bit of theory behind what I'm doing, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so this is done. Control KE takes care of this. And then let's go write a test for it. So in the test, you remember how we wrote logic. Now I'm gonna write a new test that's called validations. So it's the same file, except that there's now validations. And this test handles the business logic, while this test handles validation cases. And they can be one or they can be many. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's write a test. Fact. Here we go. Public void should throw validation exception on, what's my function called? What's my function called, guys? What does it do? Tokenize, yep, on tokenize. If query is null. Just like that. Given, when, then, and here is your invalid, let's call it null query. Null query, so here's a null, like this. And then null O token query exception, new null O token query exception. Sam, get ready, you're gonna make it pass. So that's this guy, and then in here var expected O token validation exception, new O token validation exception, and that's your null query exception. And then in here, I'm basically want to go and say, I need the func that comes out of this guy. What is this guy complaining about? Hold on. Exception is defined as simply as, it wants.
Empty constructor.
No, it's not. It's just that I didn't build
Oh,
the reference. It didn't pull the reference yet because I didn't build. That's all. Okay, so that's that guy. And then I can go here. See, now it's happy. Now I can go here and say, check this out. Action, right? Action. How come? Tokenize action, right? And here's your service, and then tokenize, and then this is your null query in here. Why did I put it into an action like this? Because I want to come back later here and say assert throws, right? And this guy is supposed to throw an O token validation exception in here. So now I can go here and say tokenize action inside that guy. Where's my tokenize action? There you go. So this will validate that the actual exception has happened, right? In fact, actually, let's start with this guy and then we'll work our way up. So this is their tokenize action. I'll go easy on you guys and then we'll go a little crazy. So here, Seb, try to make this pass. This is gonna fail. This is supposed to throw a validation exception.
Hey Hassan, quick question. What's the
Yes.
benefit you get from defining your own null reference exception or argument null exception?
So I use these exceptions as a way of defining which entity exactly has failed. Like when you go and say null O token, oh sorry, this should be O token query exception. If you say null argument exception, now you have to rely on the text inside that exception to define which issue has happened to which entity. It's too generic. We localize it. We go and say, no, I want something that actually points out that exact entity that has failed. And I want to spot it right away without having to see the details and the text and the messages
There's
and
an
all that.
argument, but the argument null exception has a name property. The name, like you don't have to parse the message. There's a name property you pass that has the name of the parameter.
Does it? Let's see.
Yeah.
Don't all exceptions have a stack trace?
No, but you don't want to have to parse the stack trace. I understand where Hassan's coming from with this. What I'm saying is, argument null exceptions got that.
It has param name, which will go into the message, right?
Param name and message.
Right. So let's say I put it into this parameter name.
There's a property. Go F12 on argument null exception.
Yeah. Let's just say here, here's Nick, right? This argument null exception dot. It doesn't have the parameter in here. Oh, there it is. The parameter name. Well,
I mean, it's cool. I mean, yeah.
no, this is good. The other problem that I see with that is that if you want to treat all your validation exceptions the same way, some of them might be null with a parameter name and some of them might not. Like there will be an issue where we go here and say this, processable query exception. And this guy won't have a parameter name in it, right? Now I want to treat all of these the same. Some of them will have this guy and some of them won't. I want to spot it right away in the name so I know exactly where the problem is. What do you say to that?
I mean, you're passing the. I mean, one, it's not a big deal. I'm not gonna throw up a huge argument.
No, I'm trying to learn. I'm serious.
Like you're wrapping this thing in the validation exception, right? Like if you want like the validation exception is the normalizer, right?
Right.
You want specific details, you go to inner exception on the validation exception.
Right.
I don't know what benefit you're getting from having null token. Like, I mean, if you want that much detail, cool, go for it. I don't care. But like, I don't like if you have an in-processable query exception, I would see that as the error exception on the O token validation exception, and then the in-processable query exception may have a null argument exception, may have something else, right? Like, you have to dig, right? Here's the thing though, right? At this point, I think this is why you guys hate me. If you're going to put that much detail into your exceptions, then you are probably doing the wrong thing, and you should make it part of the validation or whatever logic that you're doing to return that exception state. Model that except. Don't think so. Exceptions, like exceptions are for those things that you just truly cannot handle. But if you're going into this level of detail, it has this feel that's like, hey, I know the model around this, and I'm kind of trying to shoehorn it or pigeonhole it into an exception model, which doesn't really feel right, right? You're implying that with all this additional detail, I may want to do something as a result of that. Well, why not just give them a model to do that and not rely on a stack of like unwinding the stack and all that, right?
Let me show you. Why don't I show you how I use these? Just out of like a courtesy, right? So here is a, let me see if I can find a, here's an example. This is the Git file project, the digestion service, right? So let's just go here real quick.
Quick question. What's the external dependency adding here?
Oh, it's Hassan's own thing. I went and looked it up while he was coding.
The external dependency? What do you mean?
The exception, XCEPT.
Oh, the exception with the X. Oh, this guy is the best thing I've ever written ever, because it allows you to append issues in the exception. Like if you go into a service like this, not to go on a tangent, but if you go into, for instance, something like, I don't know, external repository validations. Do you see these rules that I'm adding in here? This exception allows you to upsert to the data lists. The out-of-the-box exception that you get from the .NET doesn't let you do that. Do you understand? Let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, you're validating student name. Okay. And the student name could be null, empty, and white space. So that's one validation issue, but there's also another validation issue where the name should not be less than 3 characters, right? Or maybe you want the name to be, you know, in a specific use. So you have a whole list of issues that could be attached to one parameter, right? What this does is that it goes and says, go find that parameter or upsert it so you can add more messages and more errors to your existing API response or your exception response. This is not something, not a lot of people use that. Like if you look in your, have any of you ever used this piece in an exception? Like this is your out of the box exception. Have you ever used this piece in here? The data
I've
piece.
never used the data property on that, honestly.
That data piece is the most important thing you need to do to build actual industrial APIs. Do you know why? I'll tell you why.
Bag. Come on, man. Like it's a bag that where you're loosely typing, what you have strong knowledge around. If you really want, you can always extend exception, right? Is it nice
Okay.
that it has it there? Yes, it is. And if you have variable pieces of information, but it's kind of like in my opinion,
Yeah.
like relying on data when you know the modeling and the strong typing around it, it's a little lazy.
Your API has to respond with some problem details if you're building RESTful APIs.
Mm-hmm.
People don't do that today. That's against the RESTful standard, not my standard, the RESTful standard.
Yeah.
Like if you go into a, let me show you. If you go into, how many people here are familiar with problem details and RESTful APIs? So if I go and say problem details, RESTful APIs, you're supposed to be able to have your API respond with something that looks a lot like this. You see, it goes and says details, and on the text you have this problem, right? Not a lot of people do that today. Why? Because there's no mechanism, especially in the .NET world. I can tell you 2%, maybe 1% of the people actually do that, right? What's a good
So
example? Go
I
ahead.
get what you're saying. So now you're conflating two things, right? One, this is strictly in the service world, right? Like desktop
No,
stuff
even if your
never
client,
work. Never. This is not
no, you
problems.
still,
Problem stuff doesn't exist on the on the desktop side, right?
no, you
This is
still
only.
need, no, you still need it on the desktop side because you want, if you have a form, how are you
Mhm.
going to display all the validation details under every field in that form?
I would
Let me
argue
show,
that problem details is not the way to do that.
not problem details, it would be the data on the exception. Problem details is for API.
I would argue that if you are filling out a form and there is improper, if you are not properly filling out the form, there
Mhm.
should be logic there, and you should have a model around that.
In the
That's
form itself, right?
on both sides. You have now we're talking about larger scale architectural issues, right?
Uh-huh.
One, you should have UI, you should have validation in the UI. Two,
That's structural. Okay.
there's absolutely going to be validation on the server side, right? I don't believe that problem details is the way that you deliver that information back to the client.
That's literally the standard of RESTful communications.
Okay, I can be wrong.
That's literally, if you go and look up problem details, ISO standard, that's literally how you go and you say, here it is, ISO tools ITIF. Here's how you communicate problem details through API communications. It's not popular because people don't care, but it's there. Here it is. Look, you're supposed to
Okay.
respond. In fact, actually,
Okay.
let me give you one more. If you run the template outside of the box ASP.NET Core API,
Mhm.
and you try to hit a value that doesn't make any sense, it will spit out a problem detail. But
Okay.
let me tell you where I married this exception with RESTful Sense. If you look at RESTful Sense now as a library, what it does is that it doesn't just take the problem detail, it actually defines the value out of that problem detail and returns the exact same error, like a reference to the error. Like let me show you. So if you go into, I can go on this for days, but I'll show you this real quick and then we'll move on. So if you look at your models, this is why this library is so popular, because we're doing something special with, let me just find the models, RESTful sense, services, not in here, clients, is it in here? So there is, Am I even on the master branch? Just a sec. Infrastructure, WebAssembly, RESTful sense. Controllers. Oh, there it is. I think that's the one. Did I put them in here? Yeah, so you see each one of those that responds with a special code. If you look, every one of these codes have a special documentation attached to it. That's also part of the standardization of problem details. When you're responding, you're supposed to put a reference of where the problem is that actually happened in your system, and you send people back to this IETF kind of standard, in addition to the errors that are coming in.
Okay.
If you look at, let me show you. If you look at, so I have this massive series about Blazor. If you go at the very end here, you'll see validation summaries. I walk people all the way from the API all the way up to the UI. Watch this piece here. I'll just skip real quick and get to that point. In this piece here, I basically go and say, look, these errors that are showing up in here, wait for it, watch, watch, watch. Do you see these errors that are showing under
Yeah.
every box? That's
Mhm.
coming all the way from the API.
Yeah. So let's say the problem. All right. So I will agree with you. The problem errors is fine as the transport mechanism for that, right? Is exception really the mapping though on the server side? Why do you see exception as the mapping?
So when you get a validation error, you need to throw an exception, right?
No, what I'm saying is why do you see that the mapping for validation error it goes so what I've always heard and seen the industry do is like exceptions should be for those truly exceptional things, not the things that are unexpected, the things that are difficult to recover from, right?
Well,
Like
you just
Mhm.
wait. You just said argument null exception.
Right,
So
but you can't do
Yeah,
validation.
anything.
so a validation failure is not necessarily an exceptional circumstance, is it? It's something that you expect to happen under certain conditions. I was always told that from a programming point of view, you shouldn't be using exceptions, for example, for flow control, essentially. And so a validation result is different to a validation exception. Does
Like
that make sense?
if you don't like, all right, so like here's the thing, like we have a service, right? The service
Mhm.
says hold on, sorry, I'm being prompted for sorry, the
They're
service
not
says
leaving you alone on your vacation.
no, what, sorry.
They're not leaving you alone on your
No.
vacation.
I was installing Docker for desktop. I'm experiencing an issue in my cloud build, so I'm running
Okay.
Docker because I can build it locally, but I can't build it in the cloud. Anyway, the what the fuck was I gonna say?
You were
Oh,
going to say that
so
exceptions are
the
not.
services give me a string, and I will
Uh-huh.
tokenize it for or whatever, right? We'll
Right.
tokenize it. If you fail the fundamental, that's an exceptional case. You didn't give me the core thing that's required, right?
That's an
It's not a
exception.
matter of you gave. I mean, listen, you could split hairs and say you gave me something, but it wasn't anything I could use, and that's
Yes.
validation. If you want to do that, but here's the thing: like those aren't exceptions. Like
What?
those aren't exceptions. Like, and I don't.
Why would we have argument exception, argument null exception? Why would we have all of that? That's how you, the exception is anything that deters from your happy path. That's an exception. Your happy path is that your flow gets done the way it's meant to be. Anything that deters from that is an exception. Whether it's validation, dependency, service.
I think you're really blurring the line around. I agree with Paul. You're blurring the line around flow control here with exceptions. I'm not a fan. Like you want to do it, it's cool. Like I'll work within that
Okay,
model.
what if I told you this? There are two kinds of validation exceptions. There are ones that are circuit breakers, and there are ones that aren't, but all of them are exceptions. Like there are ones that say if it's null, don't proceed with any more validations.
I
Just
mean,
end and terminate.
you're looking for one thing to rule them all, and I think that's where things fail, right?
Again, remember, I am really simple and slow. I don't think people really understand that. And I make things really, really easy. That's why you'll find masses of engineers can relate to the shit that I say because I'm keeping it at the toddler level. I am that toddler. Okay. When someone comes and says, oh, let me make it really smart. By the way, smart in the tech industry is not a good thing. Like if I look at your code and I say it's too smart, that's not a good thing. That means it's hard to read and hard to understand. You'd think that's a good compliment, but it's not. It just means that if I pick up if I pick up someone from the street and put them on any project that I have, open source or internal or external, they will produce code from day one and they
I'm
will
not
be
sure if I like
happy.
the implication, because if it means that you've tolerated Paul and I for this long, we must not be that smart.
No, you will notice. I always say I was just in a session with Mabruk the other day building this regular expression thing, and I said to him, Paul is a very, very smart, brilliant guy. He's actually is, but that's the problem. That's your engineer sitting in that dome and building things are really, really smart. But what's the point if I can build a system that is very smart, that it's not inviting people in?
Let me ask this question then.
Someone,
I get where you're going, right?
Mhm.
I respect the position you have about wanting to kind of like have it unified for the reasons that you do. That's fine, right? What is, if you're going to use exceptions to drive this, then what is returned from tokenization?
It either returns your tokenization service will give you a list of tokens, sorry, an array of tokens. Sorry, Joe, if you're watching. So an array of tokens or an exception.
why not just return an empty array?
Well, the
Oh
empty
my
array
God,
itself, it has
oh,
no information about the
did
failure.
you just say that? Yikes. Okay.
Well, if there's no content to parse, there's no tokens, right?
Yeah, but that's if I gave you an empty string.
Oh, so you differentiate between an
Paul,
empty
you take this
string.
one. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're saying an empty string and null are two different scenarios.
Yeah.
You want to react differently to null than an empty string. Okay, what if I have a string that only has a single white space character in it?
You return an array of one token that's white space, a separator token.
Okay, so that's something I can parse, so to speak. Okay, so if I've just got string.empty, literally, that's an empty array. But if I've
But
got null,
mhm,
that should throw an exception.
that's unparsable input, yes.
Okay. Why do you differentiate that null and an empty string are different scenarios?
Because an empty string, it's still tokenizable, even though it returns an empty array. But a null is not tokenizable.
You can't tokenize an empty string because there's nothing in it, right?
You can. It's just going to return an empty array. It's still a value. The value, when you say null and empty string are the same, you're basically saying you have toilet paper, but the roll is empty versus no roll at all.
Sure, I'm saying, does it matter to our business logic if you've got nothing or if you've got an empty string, which is effectively nothing, right? You can evaluate those in the same way. You can choose to, is what I'm getting at. So from a business logic point of view, why are we differentiating here that null should throw an exception versus an empty string which shouldn't?
Because if you say null, that basically means you have no URL. You have nothing to parse. The URL doesn't append to anything. There is no URL. So that should be an error. But if you have a URL, but there is no OData query there, or any query of any kind at this tokenization level, you're basically saying, yeah, there is a string, but it has nothing in it.
Does it matter whether it's an empty string or a white space string? Well, white space, yeah, maybe empty.
White space is a token.
Yeah.
Empty string is a no token. Null is an error.
Those are just different states. I mean, if you want one return value to represent them all, or two, like, I mean,
If
along
you
those
pass,
lines, I can kind of see it.
so you wanna pass null and return an empty array of tokens?
I'm not.
I'm in favor.
I'm happy with it throwing. I'm just curious about what it's throwing.
I'm in favor of consistent behavior, such that the application could still continue to process. Anything that you don't have to throw an exception on, don't throw an exception. Like if you're forced to, because continuing at this point would break something, you know something's going to break, then by all means throw an exception. But if you don't know that, then you're not really forced to throw an exception. So there could potentially be nothing wrong.
See, that's the thing. Any service should throw 3 levels of exceptions. Service exception, sorry, validation exception, dependency exception, and service exception. If you don't handle these 3 scenarios, assuming that your service method takes an input and has a dependency, at all costs, even if you don't have an input and you don't have a dependency, you still have to throw a service exception. And that service exception is your generic catch-all after you've already went through all the possible scenarios that you know of. Otherwise, you're not building defensive software. You're basically saying it's going to blow up and that's okay. I remember you saying something like this the other day, saying, oh, it will never error out. Do you know how many people laughed at you for that one? You know, that's a classic software engineer saying, oh, it'll never fail. My code is perfect. You know, I had a guy, let me tell you a story, Paul. I had a guy sitting down with me once and saying, I'm not going to handle any exceptions and my service is going to work just fine because all that it's doing is just calculating tax. That's it. You're passing a value and it's calculating the tax and that's it. Do you know what happened? The app service had a memory leakage and it threw an exception, something that he wouldn't imagine in a million years, right? And he was like, oh my God, where's the exception coming from? I said, well, if we handled it, we would have known, but now your service is barfing and we have no idea what's going on. Anyway, please look up validation exceptions. I don't use exceptions normally for if you don't handle it, if you don't, anytime you do try catch, you're already doing flow control. There's no way for you to not do flow control out of it. It's just not possible. You know what I mean?
So this is a design principle here. I don't tend to put try catches in my code. I catch everything globally and say, hey, the exceptions, you know, or it's the sort of the entry point essentially. So I have like a global catch for everything inside, say, a HTTP request. But I wouldn't put a try catch halfway down my stack and then in the catch continue to process, because what are you gaining from that, right?
Okay, that's a great question. So if you don't do it this way, that means if you're building multiple orchestrations, you don't give the opportunity for any one of these orchestrations to either do a rollback or revert or retry.
But if any one part of your orchestration fails because it threw an exception, you should be rolling back your unit of work.
Not always. There are scenarios where you go and say, I'm going to tolerate failure and I'm going to leave the message on the queue and retry later on that particular flow. Not always.
If you've got a single operation that has a chain of things that have to happen as part of that single, so that's your unit of work, right? Either the whole unit succeeds or the whole unit fails. There's
Not
no
always.
half unit.
I'll give you an example. You can be registering a student in a school. That's my favorite example. You have a student and you're registering them in a school. And you say after they're registered in school, create a library card for them, right? The Netflix folks will tell you, oh, the library card is non-critical path. As long as we registered the student, we can always go back and try to process that individually, right? If the library card creation failed on registration, you don't want to revert the registration. Do you know why? Because that basically means you're going to have to give them back their money. Would you actually give someone back? See, now combine business with engineering and you see the big picture is that, you know, if the student is already registered and the error that's coming, the exception that's coming back saying failed library card registration exception, the lady or the guy that's sitting on the registration box says, oh, it's just couldn't create the library card, but the student went through. Some people might argue to event it all out. Cul-de-sac comes to mind, but it's not idempotent. That's why we throw exceptions so you can react and determine what needs to happen. You don't like it. What do you want me to do? Okay.
It's not, I guess, typically how we would use unit of work, right? So if those two operations are separatable and can be separate units, then that's separate to those events have to happen as a single operation.
But what
My
would you,
understanding is you have a unit of work for every single operation that must succeed as a complete thing. So, in my case, where I'm dealing with transactions, I can't just put into the database an invoice header. I have to put all the invoice lines. That whole thing has to succeed as a single operation, or the invoice is invalid. So
now
that is a
that's a
unit
unit
of
of
work.
work. Yes.
Yeah. Now, separately from that, I can raise an event to then, let's say I'm inserting a payment that pays off a set of invoices, right? I can insert the payment as one unit of work, but then updating the state of the related transactions to paid can be separate units of work. Now, those things can be stuck on a queue and then achieved safely in their own time. They don't have to happen as part of that single operation, but they are separate units of work.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. What I'm trying to say is that when you handle exceptions and localize and categorize, it gives your service and your customer the ability to make that decision, even if you think at a point in time that this is irreversible. Because sometimes also when you fail, you want to do a retry on a particular aspect of things. Let me tell you this. Here's a real life example for you. You're going to run into a scenario like this. You're going to go and say, here is my flow like this, Paul. And you basically want to go and say, here is my orchestration service, and here's my student service and library registration service like this. Or ooh, what is that? What happened here? Oh, I was trying to do a do not do kind of thing for Paul, and then I used the biggest red line out there in the world, and now it's biting me. It's biting me right in the butt because of that. See, don't do mean things in draw IO. Don't do mean things. That's the point. So okay, so let me go like this. Okay, so you have these two services in here, and you're basically going in here and saying, I want to do my registration. Okay, your student service succeeded. Like in here, you succeeded, right? But this guy is still trying, to proceed with this one. This one failed. Now this guy has the ability to retry on this guy. If you handle the exception at the highest level, then that's it. It's one and done. But what if you want to retry with this one? Maybe the first time it failed, you want it the next time it didn't fail. What if you want to see that exception and call this guy and say roll back? What if you want to let it go through? Here's the 3 cases that come to mind. Do I use exceptions as flow control? You damn right I do. It's a selection mechanism. But that's just an.
I was always taught that it's bad practice to use exceptions for flow control. I don't know where it came from, but it was just something that it's always stuck with me through my career. Alongside things like you were talking about,
because it unwinds the stack, right? It's throwing an exception has real technical implications around the performance and behavior of it is an exceptionally difficult thing to do as far as
the app can continue running in a potentially broken state is, I guess, the justification. Yeah.
In a partially broken state, yes.
Yeah, potentially, partially, however, yeah.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is continue processing when some piece of what you need may not then continue to be there because of some previous exception.
For the longest of time, I used to think that, oh, if an exception happens, then end everything in the world. And then I realized I was wrong. The more and more you work with complex systems, the more you realize this last example that I gave you, if people watching us actually know how valuable this experience is, they would weigh it in gold. A situation where the lady sitting at the UI piece saying, yeah, I'm okay with the library card not getting registered. This is gold for people that would understand how the business interacts with your software. Hey, Sam, you want to make this pass? See, this is Sam for you. Talk less and code more.
Yes.
I feel like we've rabbit holed a lot there. I mean, the original point was
discussion about the exception. It's not part of the who did the new.
Well, this is what I do with every team, right? I start pairing with people and telling them, here's my engineering standard. Can you teach me something new? right? The reason why I know about problem details and data and I can go for days and days about it is because people like Paul and Nick telling me, hey, why is that? I'd be like, I heard that argument before, right? You're gonna have to share your screen, Sam. You can't just write code without screens.
I tried to
Anyway,
find the button.
Not your internal emails today, though. All right, just the code.
for God's sake, do not share. Dude, oh my God. I want to take you in this team that I'm going to, but I'm worried. I'm concerned. Everything is tinted. I can't actually take you with me anywhere. You're gonna embarrass me.
I have no secret.
I have no secret. You know how I know Sam has no secret? He uses that freaking bright theme every single time that blinds me to death. Go ahead, Sam. Let's make it happen.
Wow, that still exists.
So you want to make this test case pass?
Yes, sir. Let's run everything first and make sure things are failing. Because maybe I'm playing with you. Maybe it's not the real thing. Sam, I have a very
Let's
important
build.
question for you. Do you know how to use Visual Studio? This was
I tried to learn it from Paul.
from Paul. Yeah.
I tried to learn it from Hassan, but he talks so much, I just didn't learn anything.
I really want to
Just
know.
returned from vacation, so
So you guys don't believe exceptions is used for flow control? Okay, I'll go look
Let's
this
learn.
up.
It might be an old view, and it might be in like modern technology. There are different ways of approaching these things. I'm open
It's
to.
failed.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this: if you are going to use exceptions for flow control, and this is an implementation detail, but if you're going to use them for flow control, and you are looking to build a very scalable system, you're going to be in for a bad time, right? And by scalable, I mean like maximizing the amount of service requests, not necessarily HTTP, but requests to that service on that hardware.
Do
You're
you
going to
own
run
a
into a bad time.
Do you own an Xbox at home, Nick?
Nope.
Okay. Do you know someone who does?
I'm 47 years old. No, I don't.
Oh,
You want to play Elden Ring, which is not on Xbox. Yeah.
Elden Ring is awesome. Did you ever beat Margit?
I never played any of the Soulsborne games, so I don't have a PS5. I would like to get one for Elden Ring, but
There's a YouTube.
What can I fucking do for you, bro? Like I don't have one.
I just got this thing for the PS5. I don't know if it's gonna work, but my son loves it, but I think it's dumb. Have you guys seen this guy?
Oh, it's their VR you set, no?
Yep, and I got it, and my son liked it, and then someone told me it's actually not allowed for kids under 12.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I was like, why? Because some people said, oh, it causes seizures and orientation issues, and especially when they're still developing. So I'm gonna return it.
Yeah.
Because if I keep it around, he's gonna play it.
I mean, if you want to send me your PS5, I can solve that issue for you.
All right, Sam, give it to me. Give me back this guy.
So what?
I had an Xbox years ago. The last one I had
Sam.
was the Xbox before the 360.
You had the Echo?
Sam moved back to Dubai again.
Yeah, Sam, you need to put in there the actually I need to evolve the test to actually say, yeah, the inner exception needs to have that particular value. We'll come back.
Sam could do that, commit it, and then put the failing test that checks the input, and then throw it back to you.
Yeah, he's supposed to do that. Sam, can you evolve? He wouldn't know though. He wouldn't know. Sam, can you make
10 steps ahead of us?
Yeah,
He's
Sam,
like...
can you change the test to validate that the inner exception of the O token validation exception is null O token query exception? Do you want a hint? This smart son of a gun. Look what he's doing. I love Sam. He's a problem. Uh-huh. What? No, that's not what we're... No, we want to validate that it's null O token query exception, Sam. We want to validate that the inner exception is null O token query exception. Sam, shoot.
Yeah.
Do you know how to
Assert is
do it?
true.
Hmm.
I would use assert is true and then exception inner exception is your
Yep,
type.
yep, you could do that.
Yeah.
That works. It's not how I would do it, but it works.
I'm
Well,
sure
we
your
all know
library
you would
it,
do.
don't you?
We all know, Hassan, you would do things differently to anything that anyone else suggests.
Yes. And I am very
Floyd,
unique
can
this
you
way.
change that?
No, no, Sam, that you
Mhm.
didn't change. The test needs to fail,
Wait,
right?
He did fail.
wait. Are you? Does he need to commit first with
Yes,
the pass and
yeah,
then
yep,
make the failing
exactly.
test?
So Sam, remove that extra line that you just added, and then copy that test name and just put a thin arrow that says pass. No, not the whole test, just the name. God damn it, Sam Shu, with your bullshit. Let's go.
So
By the
Just-
way, I just started. Well, I just started watching Clone Wars with my daughter.
pass.
Fantastic.
Yes. So what happened to the? Why is it not passing? Clone Wars? Did you say?
Yeah, it's. I never watched it. It's probably. We've started. We will finish the first season tonight. It's amazing Star Wars content. It like you think it's a cartoon for kids, but it's so good. It is so good.
Should I watch Star? I never watched anything of Star Wars. Nothing.
I mean, it's
Someone
think of it as
sack him.
fantasy in space.
If anyone from Microsoft is watching, they need to fire Hassan right now for that comment alone.
Wait, don't
Can
you
I
guys
commit?
own Electronic Arts and Blizzard now? They
Not
don't-
Electronic Arts, but
Oh,
Blizzard.
Electronic Arts has like the what do you call it? The licenses on the Star Wars games, with the exception of the Lego games. I forget who owns that one.
Wait, is
but
that gone through now?
the
I heard
Blizzard
an
acquisition?
acquisition.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
the
can
Blizzard
commit.
acquisition.
Commit. Now, Sam,
So
you need to make that test say the inner exception needs to be null
no.
O token query exception. Do it however you like. Don't worry, I'm gonna clean things up for you.
The shade. I will take care of it. Don't worry, I'll take care. Like Sam can do this.
No, there's a special style for this
Huh?
to make it actually persistent. By the
It's
way,
not
writing
Hassan enough.
here's the thing, writing code and writing code that is readable is very different things.
Oh yeah. What is it? You read to code 10 times more than you write code.
Yes.
Okay.
Some people, you know, create write-only code bases. They're not for readability.
What was it I said to you the other day? I don't work in IT. I work in broken IT. That's all I do.
Sam, I think you may want to what do you call it? Look for the specific exception type.
Yeah, Sam, we need to make sure that this inner exception is.
And you
Do
can
you
just
wanna
do
just-
inner exception as whatever.
Okay, I see what he's doing. You want to give it to me just that tiny step? Fine, man. Give it to me. Sure. Yep, give it to me.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Is it fail?
Sure, just give it to me. If there's a God, he's gonna judge you
Push.
for what you just did. All right, I'll take it from here. Thank you, Samuel. Sam. Okay, let's go here. Let's go here. Let's pull Sam's stuff. Sam, when are you gonna fix your internet, bro? You're giving me depression.
Aren't you both in like Redmond or Seattle or somewhere?
Yeah, but I'm rich.
I thought the whole infrastructure in that sort of area was just like fiber everything. So
You know what's surprising is that I use Xfinity, and everyone else in the area who uses Xfinity curses the heck out of it. And I've been using it for 5 years. My internet speed is 1000 megs per second.
Wow.
nice.
And everybody else is freaking out. Everybody else is like, never use Comcast on Xfinity. And I'm like, it works for me. Maybe you're just not nice to the guy who's installing it. I don't know what to tell you here. So I'm streaming and sharing my screen and all that. Boom. Look at this guy.
I assume you're wired, right?
Yeah, of course, hardwired. But it also does on wireless on my phone.
I regret not, before we moved into this place, because I moved in here like last year, not having fiber run through the walls before we moved in.
This is not even fiber.
No, I know. What I'm saying is not having fiber, because we have one access point for the incoming, so I could run
That's your address.
wire. Sorry,
That's your ID.
That's my IP. Yeah, that's my IP. You can hack me.
Ping sucks, bro.
You can.
I would
you
hate
can,
to play like
because I'm
play, like,
streaming.
games with you.
You know, if I'm not streaming, like right now through the video and all that, this guy would go up to 1,000.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back here.
Hassan's flexing his libraries, his unconventional thinking around exceptions. It's just an hour-long advertisement for how the greatness of Hassan.
It's like my program manager. She said to me once, I wrote a vision document for a new product, and she went in and she kind of added few things in there and changed a few things. And I said to her, why did you do that? That's not my vision. She said to me, you have to know the difference between a vision document and a Hassan biography.
I am glad that there are others that see through your bullshit too.
Yeah, of course. Of course they do. So this should be is a null O token query exception. See what we were talking about, Sam? You got it? That's what Paul was trying to tell you, but you
What
didn't
is
listen.
it? Whoa, shit.
Okay. So let's see
How
here.
would you do it then? Because you said that's not how you would do it.
Yeah, so check it out. So here's what I'm gonna do. First of all, let's make it pass, and then we're gonna refactor it real quick.
Oh, he's gonna create that exception, then use his upsert data thing to add some details, and then
No. I want to show you how I'm gonna organize it. Token query exception, new null. Let's just make it pass first, and then we're gonna refactor it. Okay. So I'm gonna go put that guy in here, and we're all done here. If I run this, all done, right? So this test is doing what I expect it to. Now, what I'm gonna go do here, gentlemen, is that I'm gonna refactor this guy. So let's refactor it. So look what I'm gonna do here. Do you see this service here? I'm gonna create a new one in here, a new service, right? And it's called tokenization service.validations.cs. Okay, and this guy is gonna be a partial class. Okay, so this guy is supposed to nest under here. I don't know why it's not nest. Paul, what did you do to make the files nest under each other? Do you remember?
Yeah, I turned it off and on again.
What?
Yeah. You've probably got a typo in the name. If the names don't exactly match, then it doesn't nest.
It doesn't nest also if
I've
you're not in
never
a...
seen this. That will nest. Like I've never seen
Yeah.
it nest, and I do the same thing with partial classes. We don't.
You
I
have-
don't see it nest.
You have to have the preview version of VS, the nightly build version, and you have to go to, I think it's tools, and you have to enable the preview feature that does the nesting. Once you've enabled it, it'll do it for every one of your projects that you load into it. Is it like preview features? Yeah, in there, you tick one of the boxes.
See, that's why I like Paul. Paul is my man. It works very well with ASP.NET APIs, but with other types of projects, it doesn't. Where is it, Paul? Are you're making this up, right?
I don't know why it hasn't been a feature for years.
Do you guys see it? I don't say I'm too old.
Yeah, it's like file nesting or something, file name nesting.
If you stop scrolling, maybe I could see some of what you're trying. Like
there it is.
There you go. Yeah. So you'll have to restart Visual Studio as well.
Sounds good to me. Sounds like a plan. Love it. Well done. Let me close.
Yeah, I love it. I use that feature all the time now, and I've started structuring all of my like tests.
Where did you get that feature from, Paul?
From Microsoft, mate. Yeah, there was a good guy on the Visual Studio team. He knows all about this stuff. It's great. Oh, I think you might have mentioned it once though.
Okay, let's go back. All
So you
right.
said, I think you said,
Yes,
Paul is a smart guy.
he is.
Sometimes.
He's too smart for his own good. Paul, what do we do next in here?
Ah, that's it. So is it the same class? And it's
Tokenization service, tokenization service. Yes.
yeah. So that's all I needed to do. So
I
it
don't
worked for me.
I don't think that's what it is, Paul. Anyway, we'll figure out later. Anyway, these guys nest under each other. What I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna go here and say void private void validate validate O token query. And here's your query. And I love the magic, except that it's not exactly what I'm trying to do. So query is null. If query is null, look how I'm gonna partialize all of this. Check it out. So throw new null O token query exception. So this guy here is really talking about that particular issue. And now, if you go into another partial class that handles exceptions, watch, this is the magic for you. This is something you've never seen before in your life. Unless you've watched my videos, then you've definitely did.
What, refactoring into a method? I mean,
No, just wait. Just wait. Watch this. So this here, I'm gonna go here and say private delegate. What are we returning? Yeah, O token array. Like this. I'm gonna say returning O tokens function. And then I'm gonna go here and say private O token array try catch. Returning O token find. This is something that I invented. It's called noise canceling. Try catch noise cancellation. And what it does is that it's gonna call your function here. So I partialized it. And I'm handling this guy in here, null O token query exception. Right? And what I'm doing here is that I'm gonna go and say, oh, when you pick up this guy, oh, like this, go ahead and throw a new O token validation exception with this null O token exception. Like this. And then watch this. This is your service here that has a lot of junk in it. And now your validation and exception handling is, you know, kind of polluting your vision. Look what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna go and do this. And I'm gonna go here and say try catch. Here is your logic. Here's your validation. Take all that junk away and type validate O token query. Here's your raw query like this. And then break it down in here. So this way your method is still handling the exceptions, but all your code is focused on the business logic, no matter how many exceptions you have in the background. Are you entertained? No? Okay.
I can tell you the reference.
Okay.
I mean, I get what you're doing with the, like, you know, you're inverting, you're injecting your logic into like the handler. I get it. I see the value in it.
Do you know what the theory is behind this? Like we say object-oriented programming all the time, right? But objects are 3D. Why are we building them in 2D space?
Why do we need a delegation?
Because you need
I mean, we can using action, just using action.
action works too. I'm okay with that, Sam. Like if you want to put an action there, that doesn't matter, you know, as long as it will allow. But action mandates the input types, right?
In this case, we don't need to define delegation.
No, wait. Action mandates the input type, right?
I mean, you can have an action with no parameters. It's possible.
If that works, I'd love to try it. Here, let's try it. You may argue func, but action is not going to work. Let's try it.
No, you need a func with the
func.
one type parameter because
No
you
way.
have the return type.
Okay, let's go and try it. Here's your validation, here's your exception. You want to take this out and you want to say an action, right? Like this, action.
No, just return.
Funk,
Get rid of the whole thing.
Get rid of this line.
Get rid of this whole line.
Yes.
In.
And you want to put funk in there.
No,
Yeah.
get rid of and then returning O tokens function becomes func of O token array.
Array.
Like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mandate an input parameter, right?
No. That's the last the last type parameter is the return value on func.
All right.
Yeah.
That works
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're being nitpicky here, I would also argue that this should really be an internal method, not an internal method. You can make it a local anonymous method because I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that you will save an allocation on the delegation. Yeah.
You mean this method here?
No, the whole thing. So what you would do is you would take everything that's in the try catch, you make it its own like anonymous method or a regular method.
Why?
Like a private.
Why?
Because you're allocating on the try catch. You're allocating the delegate.
Yeah, so what? It's clean. It keeps your code in one place.
Okay.
Yeah, never mind. But
Sam
for the
knows I'm fine.
validation,
I have a friend in Sam. We will commiserate separately outside of this.
Okay.
but validate token query should be static.
Yes. Yeah.
Sam's getting petty now. And I
Yeah.
love it.
No, that's right. Unless you call, there will be a
Otherwise,
point.
we will give you a good warning.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. There will be a point in time where we need to call dependencies in here, but we don't have that yet. So that's a good point.
When we want, maybe make a decision to call other things, we can change it to instance method.
Totally okay with that. No problem. See how flexible I am?
So all that was just to abstract away the try catch, so that it wasn't.
And the validation. Because this try catch now, Paul, becomes like this. Check this out. Like when you're building something that handles all different cases, this try catch becomes like this, right? It makes noise on your business logic. So you want to keep your business logic focused in this particular view, right?
That's an interesting approach. I gotta think about that. I'm not gonna throw up an objection to it, but I do have to think about that.
It's the best thing the .NET world have ever seen, and I invented it. Deal with it.
And amazing that it hasn't been like I'm just awaiting the rapid adoption of that approach in Java, TypeScript.
You can't do it in Java.
C++. You know, anything with the try catch.
Do you know why it can't work in Java? Because Java and these languages that you mentioned don't support partial classes.
But that's a
Wait till Paul comes in and says, "Oh, let's just inherit from an abstract class that does."
We need to have
another type and access it. There's nothing that like you're getting from that.
We need to have a call about inheritance, right? And I think you should stream it, because the way that you perceive inheritance and the way that it's traditionally thought of in an object-oriented environment, I think there's a disconnect here. And we were talking about not just inheritance, but just dependencies in general. And I'm curious to get like your full view on it, basically.
Sure. I'm probably the way how I understand things is very, very different. I hope you can you can see.
I think understand maybe generous.
The way
I'm sorry. It was just there.
No, it's funny.
Wrapped. I apologize. I think you are very smart.
Nico loves me.
Okay, so here's this. This here, like this, is refactor and done. Okay, so listen, guys, this is a validation. The question for you is, can you think of any other thing that we need to do here to validate this raw query other than validating that it's not null?
Do we want to limit the
size
set in any way?
I mean, do you have cases for empty string, white space only, that type of stuff?
They're not errors, but we could try it.
I didn't say, but you said validate this.
Oh no, I see. Let's see. Maybe we'll get it for free, Nick. Like if I go here and do, here is your query.
Yeah.
Like this. What do we get outside of this guy? That's actually a very good point. I like that. I like that thinking. There you go. Now you guys are right working with me. It's great. I'm proud of you, all of you. Yeah, what did this guy give you?
Empty array.
Is it? I don't see it yet. It's trying to evaluate.
It's too busy trying to figure out
Yeah.
what
It's an
the partial files.
it's an empty array, Nick. It works.
Okay. What
It
about
works.
whitespace? Do you get the single token?
Let's try it. Here's a
And the
white.
question is, why don't you have separate tests for this? Because you know that these are cases.
Because
First,
you're
we ignore the white space, so it should work.
yeah, we already handled the white space, Nick, so it should work, right?
Yes.
But maybe what he's talking about is the concrete implementation of if you get nothing back, then just return an empty array. I can get behind that. I'm okay with that.
No, I'm not saying you have a concrete implementation, but I mean, there should be a test around here. You know that that's valid, and especially since there's so much conversation around that, the code will help serve as to memorialize that conversation and that expectation, like the test code.
So if we've agreed that like null should throw an exception and we're testing for that, and we've agreed that empty string should return an empty array, then the fact that we've had that discussion, a test documenting that fact would be the next logical conclusion, right?
Then we need a test that fails to ensure that this is the case.
Do we have to make a test that fails first and then make it pass? Or do we just have to make a test that passes on the basis that we've agreed a new aspect of how it works? And if it already passes, then that's good enough, right?
It's not TDD then.
That's respectfully, that's a silly adherence, right? That's a silly argument, right? Because if you are saying that is the thing that you have to adhere to above all else, that means that if you have something that already produces the output you want, but you want to continue to ensure that behavior, you have to unwind the implementation until you get a failed test. That seems silly, right? We are just saying that, we have evolved, our understanding of what we want to do. Our current implementation does that. Writing these tests will help us ensure that this continues to be the case moving forward.
Yeah.
How about this proposal? We change our logic to still pass all the current tests except for this one case, and then write the failing case, and then change our logic.
No,
What do
that's
you
just
mean?
noise. That's noise, and it's a waste of effort. Why would you do that? Write code to intentionally you're writing code to account for something that was unknown, and you just want to solidify. Come on. I'm gonna give you a benefit of a doubt. I give you a benefit of a doubt a lot, but really, you're gonna go in there and put a line of code just so you can take it out later, so you can have a commit that says fail.
Okay, we're at the hour though.
What do you do? What do you do, Hassan, if you've got an existing large complex code base and you have a discussion with a colleague because of a customer question or something? You've identified that there is now a new business case, and you just want to test that business case against your existing code. Do you go in there and force the case to fail as part of writing your test?
Well, here's the thing. If you don't your test code, if it's a legacy existing code, then writing the tests after the fact is just damage control. Because the code has been written in a way that it's not really driven by tests. It's driven by whatever else.
Yeah, I'm not saying legacy code. I'm saying, hey, the code was written, say, a month ago, so it's still considered to be current, but you've now identified a new business case in it.
I have to stop you right there. Legacy code for me, as soon as code hits production,
as soon as you commit it to legacy.
In my dictionary, as soon as your code gets deployed, it's becoming a legacy immediately. Actually, I like Nick's definition better. As soon as you commit it and goes into the master branch, it becomes legacy. I like that more.
As soon as you push, it's legacy. Yeah. I don't care which branch it goes to.
Legacy code to me is a code that's subject to change due to the forever ongoing changes in the tech industry.
Yeah, maybe
Paul is like, these guys are from another planet.
But I'm struggling to see why, how that model of TDD doesn't present issues when you are confronted with new information that I mean, that you just didn't know, right? And the extra, like I said, conversation for next time. We can spend 45 minutes on that while Sam puts an if statement into the code, which you'll refactor into like some partial classes.
We'll see what Joe does with. I need to refactor that logic that Joe put in there. He has riffs and stuff that I haven't seen since 1995. So .NET is from 2000, so you can imagine the agony and pain. Overall, I appreciate the discussion. We're growing together. We're learning from each other. For people watching us, as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good day.